Hi guys, and welcome to the Gentlemanly Podcast. This is season 2 and it's episode 3. And today we're going to talk about having a good story and why having a good story is so important in dating. Okay, now before I get fully into this topic, please do, if you haven't already, subscribe to my Substack. Okay, there is a link below, and the reason for that is because I'm going heavy on Substack. Okay, so writing, the written word, is becoming a much more significant part of my output once again, because that was my initial sort of skill set, if you like. I started out as a blogger, writing about this stuff, and went into video afterwards. And having had a little bit of a break, I thought that it would be a good idea to come back and do a lot more written type stuff. So get onto my Substack, right? You will get a daily email from me, and you will also get articles on Substack, which go really in depth into all of this stuff. Okay. Now, the Gentlemanly Podcast, which is this, it comes out Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays every week. Okay. We might up the frequency again at some point, but that's what we're doing at the moment: Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And there will be some more other videos coming up on YouTube as well very soon. So look out for that. But do subscribe to the Substack. That's super important, because there's some real gold that's going to be released onto there. And also follow me on Twitter if you're not already, at RealTroyFrancis, and on Instagram at RealTroyFrancis. Okay, so let's get into this. So this is actually something that I've been working on this morning for members of my 3-month mentorship program. And this wasn't meant to be an upsell, but if you are looking to improve your dating life and you would like one-on-one mentorship with me over 12 weeks, then get in touch. Email me, troy@realtroyfrancis.com, and we can have a conversation to see if you're a good fit, because this is a program that I take a few students through a month, all right? And it's very powerful, okay? It's going to teach you everything you need to know about the current dating scene and how to stand out and how to make an impact and how to get, the results that you want and you deserve, basically. But what I want to do today is to concentrate on something that I've been, a module that I've been building out, actually, which is about storytelling, okay? And the power of storytelling and why it's so important in dating. Storytelling, not only about, having cool stories to tell on a date. I mean, that can be important, right? That can be useful. And there's a place for that. But also, more importantly, having a story about yourself that you believe in and you're able to showcase to people, okay? So to put it quite simply, the key factor that separates the winners from the losers in dating, I've got some notes on the phone here, by the way, so I'm going to refer to that. The key factor that really separates the winners from the losers in dating is 2 things, okay? So emotional intelligence, right? So an ability to read the woman that you are dealing with, and an ability generally to read the room. Super, super important, okay? But secondly, it's to create an emotion or emotions in the women that you are dealing with, in the women that you are dating and seeking to date and seeking to form relationships with, okay? This stuff isn't just important, it's vital. Many men come to the self-improvement space and, they're looking for some tips and tricks and techniques and things like this, okay? And obviously, those things are at best a sticking plaster or a bandage put over a deeper wound, okay? Because yes, if you've got some clever lines that you found on the internet, you've got some good things to say, that could be useful, but you've got to back it up with something, okay? You've got to back it up with some substance. And the reason why we talk a lot about self-improvement when we teach dating is because you have to become the finished product, okay? It's not enough to talk a good game, as it were. You've actually got to become that guy, right? You've got to step into the role. You've got to step into the archetype that best fits you, okay? Now, that is partly about staying in shape, dressing well, grooming yourself well, all of those things. Partly about that, very important, those aspects. But equally, and probably I would argue more importantly, it's also about having a strong inner narrative that you are able to communicate to the people around you, all right? Super, super key. And it doesn't get talked about enough. It's not the words that you say as such, although, again, the words that you say are also important because you don't want to be boring, but it's about the personality behind those words. It's about the emotion that you ignite or don't ignite in her when you're dealing with her. Okay, so you might have heard people in the dating space talking about spikes in conversation, flirty little lines. Oh, you're a bad girl, aren't you? That kind of thing. And that has its place, but those little lines, those little conversational verbal techniques, they're not going to win the game for you. Okay, you might have read something like Tom Torero's book, How to Flirt with Girls. There's some really interesting, fun little lines and things that you can take from that text, and they can work well. But as I say, it's about the delivery. Okay, and if you deliver them poorly, there's actually a chance that they're going to hold back your progress. Okay, because they're just going to seem hollow and inauthentic. All right. So if you say to a woman, "Oh, so you're from that part of town. Oh, I heard all the bad girls come from that part of town." Okay, it's not just a lie, right? You've got to understand why you're saying it. You've got to understand what is the impact I'm trying to have here. What is the subcommunication that I'm trying to get at? Okay, you need to understand that, and you need to be able to communicate that subtext subtly and not crudely, but in a way that it ignites an emotion. Okay, she feels tickled by it. She feels amused by it. She feels, I don't know, whatever, right? You've got to create emotion. I posted on X recently. It's less about the words that you say and more about the way in which you say them. Think of a great actor reading a poem compared to a mediocre hack reading the same text. Which of them would infuse the words on the page with more emotion, power, and magic? The same words spoken by two people of differing emotional and technical baselines will create hugely divergent impacts. Okay? I think that's pretty straightforward. I think that's quite simple. And hopefully it illustrates what I'm talking about here. So why is it that Gary Oldman could read words off a page and it would sound fantastic, it would sound emotional, it would sound compelling, it would sound magnetic, and some guy in the street could read the same words and they wouldn't sound like that? Okay, it's about technique. It's about what you bring to it from your persona, or in the case of an actor, from the persona that you've created. Okay, so yes, you don't want to be boring, but understand that the words that you use are merely a container for what is being said via subtext underneath. And remember that women are your mirror. So usually, not always, but usually she's going to reflect back to you what you transmit to her. Okay, so if you seem stifled, if your transmission is boring, trite, dull, filtered, politically correct in a way that seems overly constrained, then that is likely what you're going to receive back from her in return. And on the other hand, if you put out something, a more edgy vibe, that's man to woman, that's sort of lightly flirtatious without ever being crude or vulgar, full of subtext and infused with sensuality and myth, then the women that you are dealing with are more likely to respond to you in kind. And look, caveat here, guys, of course, that's not always the case, because not every woman is going to like you. In fact, the majority of women that you meet are probably not going to like you, or they're going to be attached and not available. Okay, that's just a fact of life. That's just how it is. All right, that's fine. That's okay. But you want to have the gold standard of, okay, am I saying this stuff to her in a manner that is going to create emotion or not? Okay, and this is a twofold practice, because the other thing that it's going to do, well, the first thing that it's going to do is it's going to filter out women who are just not open to you or not attracted to you or whatever. Okay, because she's just not going to accept the implicit frame in the subtext that you are communicating to her. Okay, and that's fine, because you don't really want to be dealing with people who just aren't that interested in you. Okay, so it's going to, she's just going to say, I'm not interested, I've got a boyfriend or whatever. Okay, that's fine. But the ones who are open to you, somewhat amenable to you, warm to you, or on the fence, they are going to be more compelled when you speak in this way. Okay, when you show up in this manner, they're going to be more compelled. They're going to be more drawn to you. You're going to appear more magnetic to them. Okay, than if you're saying the usual stuff. You're saying the stuff that you've read online or you've heard in people's videos online, but you don't know why you're doing it, or you're doing it with the wrong intonation behind it or the wrong emotion behind it. Okay? So let's break this down a little bit more granularly to give you a bit more clarity. So the first thing is emotional projection. So when you are going on a date with a girl, or when you have, you approach her, right? What is the energy that you are bringing, right? Do you come across as an archetypal, mythical, magnetic man? Or do you come across as a regular guy who's just shooting his shot, who might be nice, even accomplished, maybe you've got a good job or whatever, but who is nevertheless a little bit dull, a little bit boring, a little bit beige, a little bit vanilla, okay? Now, only you are going to be able to answer that honestly, okay? Only you know the truth about this, right? But it's worth a moment of introspection to figure it out, right? Because this single element is the thing that can entirely change the game for you. Now, when I was putting this together, I was reminded of Fight Club and the early sort of parts of Fight Club where Marla Singer has an affair with Brad Pitt. Now, when you watch that movie, and I'm sure pretty much everybody has, but if you haven't, you should, it's pretty clear why Helena Bonham Carter is viscerally attracted to Brad Pitt in that film. Yes, he's a movie star. Yes, he's ripped. Yes, he's great looking. Fine. Okay, we get that. But there's something beyond that, isn't there? There's a reason why initially, and I'm trying not to do any spoilers here, although you probably all know the ending, but there's a reason why she's more attracted to the Brad Pitt character than she is to the Edward Norton character, even though she has some vibe with the Edward Norton character, right? But it's the Brad Pitt character, okay, and I say that advisedly, character, that she is most attracted to. Now, obviously, if you know what happens at the end, you'll see that there's a twist in the tail and it kind of changes the game a little bit. And that actually strengthens the point, because when Edward Norton acts as the Brad Pitt character, okay, she is still viscerally drawn to him. She is still viscerally attracted to him, which kind of undercuts the notion that it's just about looks or it's just about having an amazing six-pack or whatever. I mean, yes, those things are helpful, but it's not the full picture. And Fight Club illustrates that very well when you think about it, because it really is the mythos that you bring. And of course, Tyler Durden in Fight Club is a sort of an archetypally mythic character. Now, obviously, in real life, I'm not saying you be like him. I'm not saying that's the kind of guy you need to be, and certainly not as insanely crazy as that. But watch it and take the lesson from it. Okay, there's an intensity there. There's a magnetism there. And it's not just to do with his look, although that obviously comes into it. It's to do with the way that he presents himself. It's to do with his IDGAF attitude, right? It's ZFG attitude, okay? His audacity, his ambition, his grandiosity, his almost delusional sense of self-confidence, sense of self, sense of his own personal narrative, sense of his own personal worth, right? You can see that if you watch the movie, I'm sure, right? And it is those qualities that make him magnetic, not only to Helena Bonham Carter, who plays Marla Singer in the film, but also to the other guys, right? The guys that he brings in. He becomes a leader of men. Why is that? Because he's charismatic, okay? Because he has these qualities. Do you have those qualities? Not being exactly like Tyler Durden, but do you have those qualities just filtered through a different lens? Maybe you do. If so, great. But maybe you don't. And if your dating life feels stuck, if it feels like, you're just not really getting the results that you would like, I would be willing to bet that it's probably something to do with this. You might be saying the right things. You might be putting yourself in the right situations, but are you bringing the right energy? Are you bringing the right gravitas? Are you bringing the right playfulness? Are you bringing the right eroticism? Are you bringing the right, all of these things, right? Are you doing that or not? Okay. And if you're not, then that is likely where you are going wrong. Okay. So when you enter into the social field, you shouldn't do it passively. You have to be the active protagonist. Okay. You have to be the one who brings the emotional weather with him. Okay. Who's in control of that emotional weather, who sets the scene. Right. And the woman or women that you date are not going to do it for you. Okay. They're going to reflect what you do. Okay. it is your responsibility in the approach or on the date to set that emotional weather, to bring that vibe, to bring that energy, to bring that playfulness. Okay? She is just going to assess whatever you bring, and she's going to respond accordingly. If you don't bring this stuff, the date or the interaction is likely to be flat and a little bit dull and a little bit polite, maybe pleasant, you know, maybe mildly fun or titillating, but it's not going to set her world on fire. Okay? And to be truly desirable, you need to be bringing a different kind of energy to these interactions. And this is where narrative and storytelling are supremely important. And after all, storytelling is, of course, the oldest, or probably the oldest art form known to man. Long before we had writing or painting or music as we know it, we had stories shared around the campfire, whispered in caves, acted out in rituals. Okay? And stories helped us to survive. They made sense, and they still make sense of our place in the world. And they bound us together. They bind us together as tribes. Okay? So when you tell a compelling story on a date or in an approach, you're not just filling the silence, you're tapping into something primal. Okay? You're tapping into something that makes human beings feel like human beings. You're inviting her into a shared myth with you. You're making her feel, imagine, remember, crave, desire, covet, all of these things, okay? And that's why storytelling is so irresistible. It's a deeply, deeply human thing. It is very, very intrinsic to our psyches and to the way that we operate in the world, okay? With that being said, I'm not just talking here about having a bunch of clever stories that you can tell on a date, although that may actually be helpful, and it's not a bad idea to cultivate or to think about some of those stories in your own life. I'll give you a quick exercise later that you can do in regard to that. But it's also, more importantly, about the story that you hold in your head about yourself, the story that you tell you about you, okay? And your ability to firmly believe that story and to communicate it to those in the world around you, all right? And that story should emanate from every pore and infiltrate all aspects of your presentation, okay? Your eye contact, your gait, your posture, your wardrobe, the things you wear, all right? The scent that you wear, the manner in which you interact with her, the things that you choose to reveal versus those that you conceal, okay? All of this super, super key. And again, there needs to be a sort of deliberateness behind it, okay? What kind of man are you? What kind of guy are you? What kind of mythos are you trying to portray? And I'm not talking here about being something that you're not, because this should absolutely be rooted in who you are, but who you genuinely are, okay? You're not just an insurance clerk working in Berkshire, you know, for a decent salary, okay? You are more than that. And you need to figure out who and what you are, have a story about that in your head, and have a way to communicate that without seeming like a braggart or try hard or whatever. And I know this is probably a little bit esoteric, but if all of this sounds alien to you, then don't worry, because as I say, I'm going to give you an exercise at the end of this. But fundamentally, if everything I'm saying sounds like gobbledygook, you don't know what I'm on about, then it's possible or even likely that you don't have a strong enough internal narrative. And that in itself is a problem, because without one, you're basically just another nice guy. You're just another regular guy, okay? Maybe pleasant, maybe somewhat fun to be around, but ultimately forgettable. And that's not where you want to be. And that's not where you can afford to be in this current dating marketplace. So to try and shed more light on this, a recent ex-post of mine goes like this: you have but an instant to make an impression, and how much must be loaded into that tiny compartment of time? Your hopes, your fire, your ambition, your ruthlessness, your passion, your sorrow, your scorn, your dreams, your joy, your bile, your love. All right, in that first second, all must be revealed in a nanosecond through your gait, posture, tone of voice, eyes, and so on. So this stuff is really, really important. And I think it's something that doesn't get talked about enough. And the reason it doesn't get talked about is it's as you can see, quite esoteric. It may be quite hard to teach, but it is crucial, and it is the thing that separates those who are successful in this endeavor with those who aren't. Okay, so how do you develop this? Well, you need to really think about yourself, and as I said, there is an exercise that you can do for this: personal narrative creation. So this is journaling. Okay, I think journaling is really, really helpful. I would highly recommend it. It's a meditative act, but it's also good for world building and for building out, yourself, your future self, where you want to go, dreams, ambitions, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so journal about the kind of man that you really are, beneath all of the usual societal trappings of your job, your social status, and so on. I mean, look, if it's the case, maybe you're a CEO, maybe you're an investor, maybe you're a world traveler. Okay, that's cool. That's fine. If you've got a cool job, that's fine. Own that as part of your myth. But if you're working a regular job and you feel like you don't have a lot to offer, recognize and understand that your job, you are not your job, to quote Fight Club, right? That's a superficial thing. Okay, you are much more than that. Okay, so sit down and write about your ambitions, your dreams, your hopes, your fears, the things that make you joyful, the things that make you sad. Okay, what are your strongly held beliefs? What would you die on a hill for? Under what circumstances would you give up your life? Okay, write all this stuff down and refer back to what you've written frequently. Okay, your aim should be to cement these things as part of your living identity. Okay, so you're no longer just an insurance clerk. Okay, you're a man with a story. You're a man who has seen things and who has suffered and who has opinions and who has also triumphed. Okay, that is the story that you need to embed in your head, and that is the story that you need to be emanating when you go out into the world. You need to foreground this explicitly or implicitly when you interact with women and with other people around you. Okay, and another thing that you can do, we were talking about storytelling on dates and stuff. Write down 3 short personal stories, funny, adventurous, or mysterious, that reveal character and spark emotion. And here you can lean into mystery. In the mystery method, he talks about 5 demonstrations of higher value. These are pre-selection. So, do other people like you? Have other people liked you in the past? Do you have social proof? Okay. Any examples of being a leader of men? So, were you a boss? Were you, the head of a football team? Were you the head of a youth organization or something like that? Is there a story you can tell about that? Protector of loved ones. Have you ever jumped in a stream to rescue a puppy dog? Have you ever put yourself in danger in order to protect somebody that you love? Willingness to emote. Okay, so you don't want to be a sappy, overly emotional, vulnerable mess crying on our shoulder, but do you have the courage to be honest about yourself and some of the struggles that you've had and how you've overcome them? Okay. Successful risk taker. All right. Are you somebody who takes risks? Are you somebody who will go out on a limb to get the things that he wants? Okay. So if you can weave those one or more of those 5 things into these stories, then that's going to stand you in very good stead. Think about when or where you've embodied these traits. And you of course you need to do this subtly, right? You need to do this without seeming like a try-hard. All right. And then you can do voice practice. So you can record yourself telling those stories at different speeds. Try it with 3 different speeds, 3 different tones, playful, calm, commanding, excited. Okay. And just see how it feels. Just see which one's the best. Okay. And, doing that exercise will help you. Okay, it will help you in your real life interactions. And then what you can do when you are on a date or when you are interacting with a woman is you can practice varying the energy that you bring mid conversation. So you can be playful and then just switch it up and go into serious, and then switch it up again and go into curious. Curious, finding out more about her. Okay, and sort of see how she reacts. Note the way in which it makes the dynamic more active, more alive, more vital. Okay, this kind of ebb and flow is actually essential in dating, so it is definitely something that's worth practicing. So those are some little examples of exercises that you can do to drill this stuff. But as always, the best thing to do really is to just get out there and throw yourself into as many social situations as you can, and just practice this stuff in real life, in real time, because that's what's really going to make the difference. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please do like and subscribe and comment and share. And do subscribe to me on all platforms, @RealTroyFrancis. Subscribe to my Substack. The link is below. And I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.